there you all are. Ah, well, Wacky Wednesday. Okay, so today, Wacky Wednesday, is also Wool Wednesday. Okay, well, let's talk wool. We're going to do something interesting with the wool. I want you to take note. See, this says needle felting attachment. Those say needle felting tools. This says needle punch. So this is going to go on the machine. That's the original packaging. They've updated their packaging, and so slightly different box. So if you have a Bernina, you buy for, upside down, you buy for the machine you have. There's two versions. Remember Tech Tip Tuesdays, Leah talked about rotary hooks versus oscillating hooks, etc., etc. So we have a couple of those to choose from. I'm going to kind of walk you through this, and I'm back to my Bernina because that was the tool I bought originally, but you can get them for the brother, which means they'll fit on baby lock and whatnot as well. So I'm going to take the cover off and see the needles, 3 needles, and the needles themselves, if you run your finger up and down, it grabs your finger. They're barbed, so they're rough, so you don't want to get those in your fingers because they're really scrapey. And you can see the stitch plate is not the traditional stitch plate. So that's the needle felting plate. In Bernina world, it's called the punch plate. So there's the standard zigzag plate, and so we have 3 holes in this one to accommodate those 3 needles. So I'm just going to hand turn them. But this tool is very interesting. In the world of Bernina, in my software, I can create designs to do punch needle on the embroidery unit. So not only needle felting by machine, but digitally with the embroidery unit. So this one down here, this vest, let's go back to it. I'll talk about the bits and pieces. So there's some wool roving in here that I've felted right into the wool. Then this ribbon here is ribbon floss. Some of you, I'll pull a piece out, some of you will remember it. This was just some really heavy, I think bobbin work. Gosh, it's a little while. But this was a technique class that I did demonstration on. So this is punched right into the wool. And there's back. I mixed the wools up, a solid and a plaid, similar tones, and I wrap that right up over the shoulder there. Keep it going. So we're going to talk about that. And then for anyone who has brother baby lock, that sort of thing, they have their attachment as well. And you can see it's got barbed needles. The needles are individual because you might break one. So there's everything that comes in there. The needle holder, needle cover, the presser foot, screwdriver, the dust box, or well, in Bernina it's to protect your fingers, extra needles, and yarn guides. So let's head back here. We've removed the bobbin case in most machines. This one, of course, doesn't have a bobbin case, but there's no bobbin in it. When I tell the machine what I'm up to, in this machine anyway, it changes. It shows me this. It's not going to warn me that I'm trying to sew without thread because it knows that I'm doing needle punch. And the needles are just gonna go up and down. When you do this by hand, you're just poking. There's a guide holder here that we can put on the machine, and it will hold spools of cord here in front. I've got some different fabric. If you can put a needle through it, you can felt it pretty much. I've got some really odd bits of and pieces of trims. Got some big old rickrack. Well, you can put a needle to that, so I can punch that. I've got some little rickracks. You can punch those. Got a piece of ribbon. You can punch that. I got a piece of satin. You can punch that. On my vest, I had ribbon floss, some soft yarn, chenille yarn. If you can put a needle to it, you can felt it. This is actually cotton cording. It's got a little net case over it, but this would be like white fuzz when it's broken up. Almost like a cotton ball when you're done. And that would felt in nicely. Some extra heavy cords can be felted in. Let's see what else I've got in there. I brought my gloves because it helps, because it's a free motion project. Good old 6-strand embroidery floss can be punched in. Then under here, when this was first launched, we had a class. We're going to get around to this. We've got needle felting here. So this is all just yellow and green wool roving. It's punched right into the cloth and right into this embroidery design. There's straight up embroidery design. There's the embroidery design with satin stitch and felting. Stump work. This is super thick, really heavy. This is wire work. So these are 3D petals, and they have wire embroidered right into the edges, and so that gives that flower kind of 3D edge, and it's got a embroidery on the back. All right, I'm gonna just start with a plain red piece of cotton here. Just gonna get my rubber fingers on here. See? Just helps with the pushing of everything around. I'm gonna put my lovely foot cover back on. This will protect my fingers. And, oh, well, maybe I'll show you while it's out. It's got some slots and holes in here. If I want to push a ribbon through the big hole and out the bottom here, so it'll hold it for me while I'm punching. And there's some different size things, so you can see it'll go into the foot, and then I can pull it out through the bottom, and then the needles will hit it dead on. And this thing helps to protect your fingers, because yeah, 3 barbed needles is not what you want in your fingertips. So one of the common things that people use is that wool roving that I was showing you earlier. When you take it out of the package, it's airy, light, like a cotton ball. If you want to use a very little piece, you just pull it, make it wispy. If you want a heavier, you can bulk it up, make it quite dense, and still felt in it. So I'm just going to put it under there, and all we do is run over it with the needles. And if you break a needle, that's okay. So I'll just the one side, and you can see it's pushing the wool roving right into the cotton. So now they are one. And they, for the best hold, they tell you to flip to the back and repeat. Look, look, I even accidentally felted in a piece of thread. You can see, if that's all I wanted, I can pull on this. I'm pulling quite hard here. It's now part of the fabric. We've punched it right in, so it now belongs to that red piece of fabric. You can make colors. You can make this wispy. You can even do shapes. Let me see, I'll give a curve here. So this is lovely, but quite tedious. If you had a single needle and you're poking it with your fingers. So kind of made us a wispy little S there, a little curve. And the rest of this is loose because I haven't gone there and felted that. Now we can take some other bits and pieces. I'm going to grab a piece of that chenille yarn. We'll see what happens when you punch it. It's an embellishing thing. Back in the day, one of the machine companies came out with a machine and it didn't do anything but this, and they named it the Embellisher. So all we're doing with those barbed needles is forcing, there's that wool, it's starting to become one with the, you can see, this one's still soft enough I can pull it out. This one might take a little more encouragement to stick in. Yeah, it's starting to move into the cotton. So we're taking two different things and meshing them. So I'm just going to snip that off. And I could just keep working that in there. But it's good. It's not the big round puffy chenille yarn anymore. It's kind of flattened in there. You can see, but still, it's still soft like a caterpillar. And if you get it wedged in there, it's never coming out again. I like to felt into or needle punch into felt, or needle felting. It depends who you're talking to, what it's called. Here's a piece of satin ribbon. Let's have a little experiment and see what happens when you punch that. Some stuff never looks the same. So you can see satin ribbon, shiny, pretty. When you start torturing it with the barbed needles, it changes the texture entirely. And you see it's pushing it through to the back. It's a cool thing. I kind of loved needle felting. Here's a piece of green denim. You can felt to the denim, or you could felt denim onto something else. There's people who do great big pieces of art, needle felted. Now somewhere in here I have a piece of ribbon floss in my blue stuff, my blues and greens. All right, so here's ribbon floss. So it's a flat kind of braid. It looks like a ribbon, it looks like floss. It can be furry. Let's add it to the mix here. So this is one of those things too that I would recommend. There's a needle threader that comes with this, but I, in my infinite wisdom, did not think to bring it. There's assorted holes here that you can feed the ribbon through. I just want it to come out the bottom. Oh, maybe I'll go through the bottom first. Anyway, so needle punching, needle felting. You can do it by hand. I'm going to throw throw you the Clover link up, and I'll throw you a Bernina link up. When we first had these products out, I'm telling you, there was not a lot of information, and so in my original package, Bernina included a video, a CD. The only problem was Anne somehow got a German CD and I didn't speak German. So one of my customers who bought the tool, she had an English version, so I did get an English version. But interestingly enough, and we don't have to just do straight rows, we can chunk this up. I'm going to do some artful craziness here with that ribbon floss. But remember, I'm hitting it with barbed needles, which are pushing the fibers together. So lots of stuff that starts life out shiny is no longer shiny because it's being smushed. I'm going to cut that. We'll do a bit of a straight section. Whoop. Oh, one of my fibers went down in. Anyway, so I started punching that in. There's bits and pieces here. Just kind of a random weird attachment. And sure, I have two different ones. Because I have for a bigger machine. So all the stuff that came in this box is now on the machine, and there's the little Allen key for changing my needles, and there's my copy of the CD in English. And then I don't know if they still include them in the boxes. I don't think so. But my first needle punch set came in German. And it's kind of an interesting little find. So here's the pieces kind of all apart. There's the needle plate for a smaller series machine, like the little tiny ones, the Activas they were called. The needle grouping in those is round, so you can see, and it has 5 needles rather than 3. And once you have all this attached to the machine, it actually punches through the front away from where the needles would go in, because of the way that the 8 series is built versus the way the rotary hooks are built. So this one punches through the front. It can be really messy, so you may need to clean your machine a little more often. And then this one has a different finger guard when it's on the machine, but it keeps you from sticking your fingers where they don't belong. And then the needles, called punch needles, and they are like I said, barbed, and you just replace them. There's 2 different types for heavy stuff and for light. So here's the different one. 5 pieces. That I don't know what they are now. This was a gazillion years ago. And then my original one came with this little booklet. I don't believe they do anymore, but we can sneak a peek in there. So it shows you how to set up things, how to remove and replace. You need to clean because you're punching stuff, and so that's a kind of an artful swirl of all sorts of stuff in there. And this lady kind of took her, I think her website is Fiberella, if it's still there, if she still exists. I've had this for a while. Her name's Paula Scafidi, Fiberella.com. She had some really interesting stuff. She took it to an art form. And see this one layering in, it looks like a beautiful sunset, sunrise. So roving, we played with that, and she's kind of taken it to an art form, and you can play with the roving. So surface embellishment, surface design, but she's got some really fun things in here, and her work was amazing, and she was sort of the first person to take this to an artful ending. But you know, like, she's kind of got kind of a modern geometric going on there. I'll try to find some more samples for you. And I believe in this piece, there's chunks and shreds of t-shirt knit, silky ribbon, satiny things. You just have to understand that what you start with won't remain the same, because you're smashing it up with the barbed needles and forcing it to become part of another fabric. So, and you can even do, like, if you're wool felting, there's some of the girls who do a lot in the world of wool. You just keep pushing, roving together till you actually create felt. So we buy felt, but you can make felt of whatever colors and mixtures you want. It's amazing what starts to happen there. But there are some people out there who have changed this into like a super art form, you guys. Remember, I had those fibers from way long ago. It's just a sparkly cord. I could put that in there. There's ribbons and cords, as long as you can put a needle through it. So you can, and that wouldn't damage the needles. So that's something you want to consider when you're picking stuff. And silky satin fabric like this will not be shiny anymore. It'll be quite smashed and distorted. And just it's one of those really cool but really weird things. But see, I created sort of a ethereal flower in the background here. So you can do an ethereal background like that and then do stitching over top or embroidery over top. And it's just another way to embellish. You, like, this wheel is a whole bunch of different pink fabrics. You could totally felt those into this background wool felt piece. See, and on the back here it's just cotton. But lots of different ways that we could incorporate this. Here you go, pen style needle felting tool, and 1 needle, 2 needles, or 3 needles you can put in there. So there's some cool stuff that people have been doing this. You can see up here, this is a 3D felted flower. You can embellish little lines. If you want really fine details, here you can use like it shows the 1 needle, but you can do a 1 needle on the machine as well. You don't have to load all 3 or 5. And then there's different things. They felt into this mat, because when you're on the machine goes down into air. There's nothing down there. But when you're felting other stuff, you need to felt into something soft that you can then pull your piece off. So that's why we've got this. So, and it's a pre-designed depth for the needle, so that you don't needle felt into a hard surface. So you want to use the right tools. You don't want to cheat. Some people felt into foam boards and other interesting things, but you can get yourself into trouble and break more things. You can take a knitted cap like that and felt a design right into the knitting. done a little felted bird. There's a different felting tool. It's a little bigger to hold in your hand. You can see in the picture they've got kind of a fabric, looks like a wool scarf that they're felting a flower into. But you can do it by hand and you can do it by machine. And this is a different tool, single needles for fine detailed work. Yeah, so I'll post you some links, but if you Google it, you will find some really crazy stuff. So there you go. Weird Wednesday, Wacky Wednesday, whatever you want to call it.